Hello students. So welcome to the fourth lecture of the chapter The Rise of Nationalism in Europe. So today we'll be starting regarding the national conservation or conservatism after 1815 and also regarding the conservative regime. Okay, now so far we have already done regarding the liberalism, what did liberalism stand for, and regarding the problem of national liberalism. So next the topic that comes is regarding new conservatism. So over here you can see the term conservatism is there. So what does the term mean, conservatism? Now you can very easily relate the term conservatism to conservative, like conservative people. So this is actually a political philosophy and that stress the importance of tradition, established institutions and customs, and preferred gradual development to quick change. Like conservative people, they actually didn't like changes so as to like you can relate over here to the older generation. Like for example, the older generation, many people of the older generation, they don't like to easily accept changes that are coming in this era or in with our generation. They want to take time in order to adapt to the new situation. So the conservative people are those who they think that the tradition that they follow are correct, that should continue, new changes should not come, and even if new developments come, it should be in a very gradual process. Like क्या है ना कि वो सोचते हैं कि जो पुराने ख्यालात है वही सही है, नया ख्यालात नहीं आने चाहिए, और अगर आते भी हैं तो उसमें टाइम लेना चाहिए, क्विक चेंजेस नहीं होना चाहिए. और उनके हिसाब से क्या होता है ना कि लाइक द ओल्ड थिंग्स लाइक द चार्ज, द मोनार्की, the aristocracy, ये सब सही है, because we know we are studying about Europe of the 19th century, 18th century we are studying, and we know that in those days there were the king, monarchy, autocracy. So this was going on in the society, and now this group of people, they know that if autocracy khatam ho gaya, or if monarchy goes away and there is democracy, then they will be a lot of privileges will be taken away from them. So they didn't wanted that. They didn't wanted the people of the low class or the third estate people to get equal status. So the conservatives, they did not wanted new changes to come easily. They believed, as I have written in the second point, the conservative did not wanted to return to the pre-revolutionary days. Like they did not wanted to go back to those days in which National Assembly was there, Napoleon Bonaparte was there, where he tried to maintain certain equality among people, and also they believed in preserving traditional institutions. उनको लगता था कि जो ट्रेडिशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस थे वो सही थे और उनको प्रिजर्व करना चाहिए, लाइक द चर्च, द मोनार्की, सोशल हायरार्कीज, प्रॉपर्टी एंड फैमिली. So they believed in that. So as you can see, I have highlighted some points. Preserving traditional institutions. Now we know that like in 1789, so there was Louis XVI. So after that there came the National Assembly till 1799. So after the National Assembly there was Napoleon Bonaparte who came. So Napoleon Bonaparte finally in the Battle of Waterloo in 1815 he was defeated. So when he was defeated in 1815, we already did in the previous classes, so there were 4 countries who helped in defeating Napoleon Bonaparte. So they were Britain, Russia, Prussia and Austria, and simply as I have told in the earlier class also, we simply can call it PRAP, P-R-A-P. Okay, so in 1815 as Napoleon was defeated, so there was the end of Napoleonic Code or the Napoleonic era in Europe. But Napoleonic, you can see his ideologies were spread in many parts of Europe by the French army. Now this group of people like Russia, Prussia, Austria and Britain, they wanted to continue preserving the traditional institutions. So they start taking certain steps. So we'll be reading up about that. Before that, you can see the 4th point I have given. They also believe that modernization and modern principles such as modern army, efficient bureaucracy, dynamic economy, etc. can strengthen traditional institutions and autocratic monarchy. Okay, now usually what happens, sometimes a question might come for a mark, like what helps in strengthening the autocratic monarchies of Europe. So for that you have to write modern army, efficient bureaucracy, dynamic economy, abolition of feudalism and serfdom. So these all can strengthen traditional institutions. Okay, now traditional institutions, what was it? The church, monarchy, social hierarchies, as in the 3rd point I have given. So the conservative people, they believed that modern principles such as a good army, a very strong powerful army, a very good efficient bureaucracy, dynamic economy that helps in times of ups and downs in the economy, then abolition of feudalism. So all this will help in strengthening the traditional institutions, means it will help in strengthening the church, the monarchy, all that. And also as they believe in that, they started to take steps so that these all measures can be taken. Now how did they start to take the steps? Now what did the conservative people do? uh, the conservative people, you can say the people, most of the people from the Crab nations, they they met together actually at a place in Vienna, and they met for a congress, and that was in 1815. And we know that congress to be the Congress of Vienna. Now, the Congress of Vienna in 1815, and the representatives of European powers such as Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, who collectively defeated Napoleon, met at the Congress of Vienna to draw up a settlement for Europe. Now, those big countries, these four countries, they think themselves to be, saviors of Europe. They think that, Napoleon Bonaparte was somebody who was against all the social orders and traditional institutions, and he was, causing harm to Europe, or to France already he have done, and he was now spreading it up. So they thought it was their duty to stop him. And as they were able, or as they were successful in defeating Napoleon, they felt, that they should, meet together and draw up a settlement for Europe. Now let's see what the settlement they did. Okay. Now the delegates drew up the Treaty of Vienna in 1815 with the objective of undoing most of the changes that have come about in Europe during the Napoleonic War. Okay. Now in this Vienna Congress, they decided they had an objective. Now what the objective was? Undoing most of the changes that have come about in Europe during the Napoleonic period. Like Napoleon, whatever changes he brought, this group of people now in the Treaty of Vienna, they will be undoing that. Changes, we know the Napoleonic Code, for example, we have done already. The Napoleonic Code was the most important one. If we study that, we know what the changes were brought about. Now they wanted to undo those changes. They didn't wanted the Napoleonic Code and whatever was under the Napoleonic Code, to continue. So what they did, they set up this treaty, and they started to have certain discussions, and they had certain points by which they tried their best in order to undo most of the changes. Now usually what happens, when we have a congress, when for example we have a meeting, there is a host, the main person who looks after the matter. So over here also, the Congress of Vienna was hosted by Duke Metternich, the Austrian Chancellor. So this is a picture of Duke Metternich. So he was the Austrian Chancellor, and he was the person who hosted the Congress of Vienna. Now what are the changes that they did? Now, as I have written, undoing most of the changes, so they took certain steps. So for the steps, the first was the Bourbon dynasty was restored to power. Now try to recall, what was the Bourbon dynasty? The Bourbon dynasty was the one of Louis XVI, if you remember. So Louis XVI, हम लोगों ने पढ़ा था Louis के बारे में. So he was from the Bourbon dynasty. Simply remember, we have this Bourbon biscuits which are quite famous and common. So you can remember it that way, the name of the dynasty. So the Bourbon dynasty was restored to power. Because Napoleon is gone, he was sent to exile. So now they restored the Bourbon dynasty. Means what? Traditional institution. Remember, in the last slide I said they believe in preserving the traditional institution. So monarchy एक traditional institution है. So what the people did, they restored the Bourbon dynasty to power. Means they restored the monarchical form of government. Okay, so they were trying to preserve the traditional institutions. Secondly, France lost the territories it had annexed under Napoleon Bonaparte. Now we know Napoleon had annexed a lot of territories to under himself. So France, it lost all the territories that Napoleon had occupied or had annexed. So it was a loss for France. It lost all the territories. Thirdly, Prussia was given new important territories on its western frontiers and a part of Saxony. Now Prussia, now you'll hear the name Prussia a lot of time in the chapter, in the coming chapters also. Prussia is the place which later becomes Germany. Okay, the बाद में भी Germany बनता है. So Prussia को क्या मिलता है? It gets its western frontiers में उसको कुछ territories मिल जाती है. It gets certain territories in the western frontiers and also a part of Saxony. So it's a a big gain for Prussia. Moving next, Austria. Now Austria was given control of northern Italy. Austria gets control of the northern part of Italy. Russia was given a part of Poland. Now Russia was given a part of Poland. Now you'll be if you read history of Europe, you'll get regarding this a lot of times, like Russian control in Polish areas. Now Poland suffered a lot during this period because Russia had taken over Poland, and also later we find many other countries, big powers, also tried to take away Polish areas. So the Polish people were losing their identity. So over here we can find that Prussia got Saxony and some areas in western territories. France को क्या होता? France lost all its territories that were annexed by Napoleon. Austria got northern Italy. Russia was given a part of Poland. But we don't find mention of Britain over here, though we know Britain was a part of the four countries who defeated Napoleon. Now Britain did not take any territorial areas in this. But another important point of this Congress is that the German Confederation of 39 states set up by Napoleon was left untouched. Now Napoleon, what he have done, he had, we already read, he have set up a German Confederation of 39 states. 39 states together, they were set up as a confederation. Now that was not done anything, like that was left that way. It was untouched. Whatever Napoleon have done, because we already read, like they wanted to undo the things that Napoleon did. But in this matter, they did not do anything. The German Confederation was left untouched. Now, why all these steps were taken? Their main intention was to create a new conservative order in Europe. Now, as we got all these powers, they are having control in different areas, and most importantly, in France, one, they lost the territories, and secondly, monarchy came back. Monarchical form of government came back. As we know, in Austria, Russia, Prussia also, in that time, monarchical form of government was there. So they wanted the monarchical form of government to prevail in France also. So the main intention was to create a new conservative order. So they were now creating new conservative order, because we already know that by this time liberal nationalism came up. People had the feeling of nationalism. They knew the concept of nation state, and they were wanting for that. So a conservative order was created in Europe, so that people will not go into new revolutions and want democracy and all. Now this is a picture of the Congress of Vienna. Now over here you can see the people sitting over here. They are all the important heads of the four countries. Okay. The next is the conservative regime. Now what is the conservative regime? Now as we got already all the changes that came up, the conservative people, like the conservative regime after the Congress of Vienna in 1815, it was set up, right? Now what was this? This regime was actually autocratic. Okay, they wanted a autocratic rule, and that actually happened also. It was an autocratic one. They imposed censorship laws. Abhi censorship laws क्या होता है? Okay, censorship laws, we can simply say, like it is like, what do you say, like a ban, not a ban exactly, it is like a hindrance to the press. You can see, yeah, it's like a hindrance to the press. Like whatever the press, like we have newspapers nowadays, we have the newspapers, we have media channels, so many news channels we have. Now what happens, if you take example, okay, take today's date, present time. Now we know if the government does something wrong, maybe the government used to take so many steps, so many policies, and we also find a lot of criticism regarding the government. We sometimes do find regarding press, the newspapers, or in the magazines, or in the television itself, talk shows are held, debates are held, or in the newspapers articles are written which are directly against the government. They're criticizing the policies of the government. Now why are the press or the media able to do this? Because there is no censorship laws imposed on them. If censorship laws are imposed, then what happens? People, like the reporters, the journalists, they cannot directly report against the government or the king. They cannot write regarding the wrongdoings or criticize the government. Okay, and even if any news are to be published, it was it have to be you can say the secretary or the people from the king's the autocratic rule, they'll be looking into it, and if they find it appropriate, then only it was allowed to get published. Like we know in India, for example, like during the Quit India movement, during the civil disobedience movement, the British people, they used to put censorship laws. क्यों लगाते थे? क्योंकि in India we know Gandhi, Nehru and all, and Subhash Chandra Bose, they were trying to have mass revolution. They were trying to create mass revolution, and for that they used to write in the newspapers regarding the British people, what the British people are doing in places of in different places of India. And we know during those days there was no TV. So like TV में तो regular news आते नहीं थे, तो लोगों को कैसे पता चलता था? And obviously there was no internet. So how the people know actually what the British are doing? By the newspapers or the pamphlets. But during the time, the British government, they imposed the censorship laws. And क्या हुआ था उसके बाद? The reporters could not write regarding what the British was, people are doing in different parts of the country. So it was like a hindrance to the press. So they were trying to hide their reality. So the conservative regime, they imposed the censorship laws. Thirdly, they did not tolerate criticism, and the government could not be questioned. And this is a big thing. It's like, हमको जो करना है हम करेंगे, तुम सवाल नहीं कर सकते. Like the people did not have the right to question. Okay, so there was no freedom of speech also, we can say, because अगर freedom of speech होता, so we could have questioned. Now, as it is written, they did not tolerate criticism, and the government could not be questioned. From this we can understand that freedom of speech was curtailed. Okay, so the government, they did not allow or tolerate any criticism, and nobody could question the doings of the government or the steps taken by the government. So that also shows that it was a autocratic rule. Fourthly, the memories of the French Revolution continued to inspire for another revolution. Now this is something different. अब क्या होता है ना, even though all the steps were taken, there were censorship laws imposed, it was an autocratic rule, they did not tolerate criticism, nobody can question the government. Even though all these things were happening, still the people of France, they do remember the French Revolution. They do remember how in the French Revolution, they got freedom from the autocratic rule of the dictatorial rule of Louis XVI. They do remember that. So as they do remember that, they continued to inspire for another revolution. Like it was like, they knew that once they were successful, so they can do that again. So there was like, the memories were fresh in the minds of the people. And of course there were people like, there were a lot of nationalist people who helped in reviving the memories of the French Revolution among the people. And one of the major issues taken up by the liberal nationalists who criticized the new conservative order was the freedom of press. Okay, now as I have already mentioned in the second point, they imposed censorship laws. That was the freedom of press was curtailed. So one of the major issues, or one of the major steps that was taken by the liberal nationalists who actually did not like the conservative order and criticized them, was the freedom of press. Now the freedom of press was taken by the liberal nationalists. What they did, even though it was not allowed, they did their best in order to write regarding criticizing the government, or write regarding what the king was doing, the steps that they were taking. So this was all about regarding the conservative regime. So we know, so far we have learned that conservatism is actually a political philosophy, and it can simply be related to the term conservative. अब conservative का meaning तो सबको पता है, जो like you can say somewhat orthodox also. So they didn't usually like quick changes. उनको लगता था वो जो सोचते थे, जो वो मानते थे, वही सही है. तो conservative people, they set up this conservative order or the regime, and there was a Congress of Vienna, which is important. You'll be getting questions, you might get questions regarding the Congress of Vienna. And also one more question might come, such as who hosted the Congress of Vienna. So the answer is Duke Metternich of Austria. And you might also have a question regarding the proposals of the Congress of Vienna, like France lost its territories, Prussia, Russia, Austria, उनका gain क्या हुआ था, और फिर German Confederation was not touched. So that will be the points. And we also got regarding, as the regime was a autocratic one, there was censorship laws imposed. It was the government could not be questioned. The government did not tolerate criticism. But even though all these things were happening, the liberal nationalists, they tried their best for the freedom of press, and also the memories of the French Revolution continued in the minds of the people and hearts of the people, and it inspired them for another revolution. They had the belief that they can go for another revolution and they can bring changes. So this is all for today. So the next we'll be doing regarding the revolutionaries. Now how after that the revolutionaries came, how secret societies were formed, and also we'll be getting regarding feeling of romantic nationalism and national feeling. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you.